I kind of have grown up in the urban Midwest. My parents were very political, and I was not so much political, but life circumstances led me down a political path. Um, First, uh, I dropped out of college because I just wasn't satisfied spiritually. It wasn't the right thing for me at the time. And I started working sort of a normal job in this like small scale factory kitchen. And this thing that happened to me is very interesting because I'm a numbers person. And every single day we had this board that the manager would show us. He got us all together in this little huddled meeting and he would point to these numbers and say, here's our cost inputs and here's our expected sales, here's our actual sales, yada yada yada. And the one number that really stood out to me was the labor inputs. And he said, hey guys, you guys all have to minimize the labor cost input. And I thought to myself, now why is it that us workers are incentivized to minimize the labor cost input? What's the deal here? And that really planted the seeds for a more fundamental understanding of class that almost runs in a Marxist direction. And after I got another job, I actually ran into representatives from the IWW who were trying to start a union in my workplace. And from there, I started to get much more interested in politics. And a good friend of mine at the time started passing me books. He passed me Mao and he passed me Reform or Revolution by Rosa Luxemburg. And I read these books and they really resonated with me. They started to shape my view of society, and realized that social change was a much more broad, complex issue. And at that point, I didn't really agree with the IWW and their sort of one big union strategy. Our workplace organizing didn't succeed. It was a little bit of a clown show, but we did learn a lot, and it took a lot of boldness to do it. I moved on, and me and my friend were looking for a communist party to join because we thought, IWW, it's not cutting it. He was fed up with the sort of liberal academic people that were in there, just kind of not really wanting to fight for real change. And we looked at Socialist Alternative because they had a physical table. The Trotskyists are out selling newspapers in our town. So we became interested in them, but after reading their newspaper, we didn't really get anything out of it. We didn't think they were that great. And eventually we learned that PSL was starting a chapter in our town. So we joined PSL, and for 2 years I witnessed a PSL branch in my town going from an early formation to a more advanced sort of formation, and saw how this branch comes into being and learned a lot of how they operate. And I ended up being exposed towards the end of my time at PSL to Caleb Maupin, whose critiques of movementism and critiques of the existing left really resonated with me, made me realize the flaws in PSL. And so I started bringing a lot of these critiques forward to leadership of my branch, and it did start to get a little bit ugly. It did get a little confusing. And ultimately, I had to leave PSL and look forward to greener pastures. And that's why I joined CPI, because I tend to agree a lot with the line of CPI. And I think that with PSL, the whole movementist strategy was able to convince me in 2019 during this intense summer. We had Black Lives Matter. We had this sense that there was some grand change going on. And for a while, they were able to really make me feel like I was part of a greater tide of some kind of massive change. but that ultimately was proved to be a fantasy. And, I bitterly left PSL. And now here I am wondering how we're going to make things work for America, and, what is the fate of the future of the workers of the world.